Welcome to SVG-TV News for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. I am Jennifer Richardson with the details. The Lands and Surveys Department will soon roll out high-quality digital land mapping for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a significant step that is expected to drastically improve land demarcation across the country. The aerial drone mapping was officially launched today as part of the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project led by the global nonprofit technology organization PLACE US. Chief Surveyor of the Lands and Surveys Department, Keith Francis, expressed confidence that the new mapping technology will significantly enhance the single window for land and property transactions, making the process more efficient and enabling easier access to land imagery online.
What this will do is make this imagery, this part of the exercise is to make this imagery available to the Lands and Surveys Department to provide a digital map of the country, where it is our intention to digitize each land parcel and produce a map, a base map that will be used for all other activities. We hope that eventually this will be available online and that it will at some point lead to a system of registration of titles as opposed to the system of registration of deeds which currently exists.
Francis also highlighted that the digital mapping would make land transactions simpler and more accurate, replacing the outdated system of deed registration. He noted that this advancement would ensure a more transparent, reliable, and streamlined process for landowners and prospective buyers.
Many of us who have had to deal with the process of land transfer know the difficulties and the extended time it takes to get a lawyer to do a title search and have all your dots lined up to get a transaction completed. When we move to the system of registration of titles, it will be a government guaranteed title. So the transfer of property will be very much easier and faster and more accurate. And we are hoping that this is the foundation for us to move forward in that regard.
The last aerial survey of the country was conducted 15 years ago, costing the government over $1 million. However, with the new drone mapping initiative, the cost is significantly lower, while the quality of the imagery is expected to be far superior. Francis has also appealed to the public for cooperation during the drone mapping exercise, as markers have already been installed across various properties.
We have established markers. They are an iron stake that is painted, and it is surrounded by a plywood cross painted black and white. And I'm sure people have been wondering what they are. We beg of you, please, not to remove them. They are temporary. They are for the drone to be able to georeference the photographs to know where they fall so that they can stitch these photos together to make a mosaic and prepare a map. So we ask the public, please, to bear with us. After January, they would deteriorate or they can be removed. But in the meanwhile, it is of critical importance that these remain undisturbed so that the photos can be accurate and georeferenced.
This innovative mapping project will play a key role in modernizing land management and property transactions in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, bringing the country in line with global standards for land administration. Minister of Finance Camilo Gonsalves has expressed concern over the changing landscape of St. Vincent and the Grenadines due to frequent natural disasters. However, with the upcoming commencement of aerial mapping across the country, the minister sees great potential for improved disaster response and future planning. Gonsalves, who was present at the launch of the aerial drone mapping project, emphasized how this initiative will help properly identify and visualize the landscape, particularly in the aftermath of natural events such as volcanic eruptions and more recently, Hurricane Beryl.
The data from which he operates is dated. And you don't want that if you're in the business of planning. And in a country where we have been experiencing a natural disaster in recent years on average of every other year, the value of the data is important. You remember that we had Hurricane Beryl this year. We had Hurricane Elsa a couple of years before, and we had the volcanic eruptions the same year. And each of those disasters changed our landscape, sometimes in drastic ways. And each of those disasters will change and are in the process of changing the patterns of internal migration in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Many of the people who left volcano-impacted areas are not returning to those areas. And we had this in 1979 when the volcano erupted as well. It fostered a great deal of internal migration.
The minister also noted that the lack of accurate, updated data has delayed planning efforts in certain areas of SVG. Gonsalves emphasized that the new data would be particularly beneficial when considering the impacts of climate change.
And the usual challenges of urbanization and the issue of a hurricane wiping out entire Grenadine Islands. That's also going to change the physical space of where and how we live in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And issues related to the academic study of disasters, issues related to where our floodplains are, where our Lahar valleys are, issues related to where it is safe to live and build and develop in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all depend on more than anecdotal data of where I used to play cricket and where I used to play football. They depend on quality, high quality, current data.
In addition to aerial drone mapping, Place US, the organization responsible for the project, will also be conducting street mapping throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Over the next 3 weeks, drones will be visible in various areas, beginning in Kingstown. Frank Pitchell, a representative of Place US, stated that the vehicle will also be traveling through every street to ensure that detailed images of both the land and the streets are captured from both air and ground perspectives.
Yes, we're actually collecting the aerial imagery, but also street view data. And the aerial imagery will be of a very high resolution, about 10 centimeters per pixel. So if you imagine, one of those yellow Post-it notes, you'd be able to pick that out. Now that's as compared to satellite imagery that's usually at 30 to 60 centimeters resolution. So a significant improvement, which is obviously critical in a place with tight boundaries, steep slopes, etc. Supplementing that data will be the street view imagery. And this will be captured using a large camera mounted on a vehicle. And over the coming weeks, you'll see that vehicle hopefully on every road here on the island. So I'm looking forward to some long days and some car sickness. But thanks again to the team who's supporting us here from Lands.
These mapping efforts aim to produce high-quality data for a variety of applications, including urban planning, disaster management, and land use development. Similar aerial and street mapping projects have been successfully carried out in several countries, including Malawi. Today, December 10th, is observed as International Human Rights Day, which also marks the conclusion of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Human rights activist Ginny Olivier expressed concern over the effectiveness of current awareness programs, noting that this year's 16 days of activism was relatively low-keyed. Olivier, who has been a vocal advocate against gender-based violence, is also part of the network of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and believes there needs to be stronger collaboration between the private sector, civil society, and government to address this pressing issue.
There is a commission on gender equality that was established by cabinet, not by me or you, by cabinet, but it does not function. And I am calling on the authorities that be the Gender Affairs Division to make certain that that functions, that is representative of government, NGO, and private sector. Having said that, had that commission met, each of the members would have had an opportunity to speak to an activity that they would have developed, initiated, and implemented.
The human rights activists also pointed out that many people are still unaware of their rights, and this lack of education is a critical issue that must be addressed.
Rights, our future right now. It focuses on how rights are a pathway to solution and how these rights play a critical role as a proactive and transformative force for good in terms of crisis. The goal of today's session was to ensure that equality and fairness, that people recognize freedom, the freedom for human beings to make choices about our lives and to develop our potential as human beings. It is about living a life free from fear, from harassment, or from discrimination.
In observance of International Human Rights Day, the network of NGOs carried out several whistle-stop activities in Kingstown, aiming to spread the message of human rights awareness. Oliver emphasized that the message remains clear and consistent, noting that Vincentians need to understand and exercise their rights.
This day to speak to Vincentians who heard us, to listen to our voice, to remind them that the rights belong to all of us, regardless of our age, our sex, our nationality, or religion, or freedom from slavery and torture, or freedom of opinion or expression, the right to work, education, health, etc. Whether we are a politician or we are public servants, nobody has a right to denounce our human rights or to take it away from us. We have the right to liberty and freedom from slavery and the torture. We have the right to freedom of opinion and expression. So when we see things in this country that's not going good, we need to speak about it. Don't close our big mouths. Open the big mouths and talk.
Every year, the 16 Days of Activism campaign begins on November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and concludes on December 10th, International Human Rights Day. The campaign aims to raise awareness and encourage action to end gender-based violence worldwide. Oliver's call for greater awareness and action comes at a critical time, urging all citizens to be more proactive in advocating for their rights and the rights of others, especially in the fight against gender-based violence. In the 72 hours weather outlook, the SVG Meteorological Services says the Atlantic high-pressure system is dominating the weather pattern, and a few sporadic light to moderate showers will cross the islands within the next 24 hours. It says unstable conditions could trigger some pockets of moderate showers across our islands on Thursday and Friday. Gentle to moderate east-northeasterly trades are crossing our islands. Wind speeds are expected to gradually decrease and become light by Thursday. Seas are slight to moderate in open water, with swells peaking near 1.2 meters on western coasts and near 1.8 meters on eastern coasts. Swell heights are expected to further decrease from Wednesday evening. In addition, the forecast notes that varying Saharan dust haze concentrations are crossing our islands and should thin out on Thursday. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force, the RSVGPF, is investigating a fatal shooting that occurred in Rose Place in capital Kingstown on Monday, which claimed the life of one Jarvis Smad Dan Horn, a 28-year-old resident from Belmont. A news release from the RSVGPF says police promptly responded to reports of the incident, where they discovered Horn with multiple gunshot wounds to the head. He was immediately transported to the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital, where he later succumbed to his injuries. A post-mortem examination is expected to be conducted to ascertain the exact cause of death. The RSVGPF is appealing to anyone with information that could assist in the investigation to come forward, noting that your cooperation is vital in ensuring justice in this matter and maintaining the safety and security of our nation. Around midday today, gunshots rang out in capital Kingstown. Reports indicate that a pedestrian was accosted by a masked gunman near a gas station located close to the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. The pedestrian was reportedly injured during the incident and was quickly rushed to the nearby hospital for treatment. The gunman is said to have fled the scene on foot, and authorities are currently investigating the situation. Today's shooting in Kingstown is the third such incident in recent days in which 2 people were gunned down. Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of crime Trevor Bailey is urging parents and guardians to take extra precautions when shopping in capital Kingstown with children during the busy Christmas season. According to ACP Bailey, the lack of adult supervision in such a bustling environment can lead to a range of issues, including children getting separated from their parents or guardians. ACP Bailey also emphasized the importance of teaching children safety measures. The Assistant Commissioner also highlighted the potential for theft and other crimes that tend to spike during the festive season, and assured the public that the police force will be increasing its presence in and around capital Kingstown over the Christmas period. With the holiday season already underway, ACP Bailey's message is clear: safety should always be a priority for all residents and visitors. There has been a notable increase in cases of the hand, foot and mouth disease, the HFMD, recently in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This highly contagious illness can affect both children and adults, and experts are urging the public to be more vigilant. Pediatrician Dr. Davis Andrews is taking the initiative to educate the community on how to identify the disease and manage it effectively.
It is spread from infected oral secretions or saliva. So this may be transmitted from one child to another, who may put a toy in the mouth and that is shared with another child. It could also be spread through the stool. So if the hands aren't washed properly after passing stool, that hand could also spread that virus around. So how does it present? As I mentioned before, it causes a rash, but however, it may start with just a simple fever. So a fever which is usually low grade. There may also be other viral symptoms. So there may be a little abdominal pain, there may be vomiting, there could even be a little stuffy nose, usually preceding the onset of the rash, probably 2 days before the onset of the rash. Now the rash, as I mentioned, may be affecting the hands, and interestingly, it may just start like a mosquito bite or an insect bite. However, as time progresses, it may change to be somewhat of a vesicle, so it looks fluid-filled, and then eventually it crusts over.
According to Dr. Andrews, the initial signs of HFMD often include fever, loss of appetite, sore throat, and a rash that develops on the hands, feet, and sometimes in the mouth. The rash is typically red, flat, and may progress to small blisters. In some cases, children may also experience painful mouth sores, making it difficult to eat or drink. Dr. Andrews also shared important advice on how to manage the disease when it is suspected that a child or family member has been affected.
The fever and pain, we may be given some over-the-counter acetaminophen or paracetamol, which will help with the fever and the pain. We'll also recommend that the children remain very hydrated. So lots of fluids, especially during this time where there may be a fever and their intake is significantly decreased. When do you see a physician? I would recommend that you see a physician when, one, you're not sure of the diagnosis. Now, it's important to understand that there are numerous conditions that can present with a fever and a rash. And it's important that the diagnosis is correct, because there are some infections that will require even further or additional treatment. I'd also recommend seeing a physician if there is concern about intake. So a child who's not eating and drinking sufficiently may need additional support for hydration, which could be offered in an outpatient setting and in some cases even in a hospital.
Furthermore, Dr. Andrews emphasizes several key preventative measures to reduce the spread of the disease.
Prevented by ensuring that all persons are practicing good hygiene. So hand washing, soap and water, especially in settings with our young children, our daycare setting or schools. It's important that our toys or areas or play areas are cleaned and sanitized properly. Also, ensure that those children who are infected, so anytime there's a child who has a fever or any sort of illness, the recommendation is to stay home because of the risk of spreading to other children. So in summary, hand, foot, mouth disease, though concerning condition to many parents and teachers, it is a viral illness that is self-limiting, usually lasting about 7 days, and can be managed with supportive.
The pediatrician is reminding the public that while HFMD is generally not serious and usually resolves within a week, vigilance is essential to protect vulnerable groups, particularly infants and those with weakened immune systems.